This evening, we will be speaking with filmmaker and founder and director of AMERINDA, Diane Fraher. We are very pleased to have her here, and Steve and also David Martin, thank you for joining us tonight. I will be doing a further introduction of Diane very shortly. I am Kat Griefin. I'm a professor in the Art and Design Department, and I manage the Gallery Museum Studies program, and I'm very honored to be working here as the curator in residence at the KHC through this past semester and into this semester. This program is supported by the National Endowment for the Humanities Challenge Grant. I also want to thank President Timothy Lynch, Interim President Timothy Lynch, for all of his support of this program. Also, all the other administrators and faculty who are here and have been supporting the programs throughout the last season and into this season. I also have the great pleasure, for the very first time, of introducing and welcoming the new director of the KHC, Dr. Laura Cohen, who is here with us.
Hi everyone, I just wanted to introduce myself. Thank you so much, Kat. And it's wonderful to see all of you, and I hope as the semester goes on, we'll see more of your faces at the variety of programs that we have, and we're looking forward to more collaborations, not only with Kat and the rest of the team, but just bringing more students and people to the center. So thank you so much.
So, for those of you who've attended some of our other events, this may be a little bit of review, but this is really, this whole colloquium and the exhibition that will follow it next year is really a collaboration. There's no one author or programmer here, so I want to share some of the people who've been involved in this colloquium. Danielle Means is a citizen of the Lakota Nation who's the consulting curator and advisor on this project. Also, Diane Fraher, though she's speaking about her own personal filmmaking work today, has also been advising us on the colloquium and on the upcoming exhibition. We also have the KHC staff, who are so wonderful and so helpful. Joel is here tonight, who've been working with us. Graduate curatorial fellow Sophia Lago worked with us last summer in the early stages. KHC fellows, Barbara Kelly, raise your hands, can you, Barbara Kelly? Angelica Palmer, where's Angelica? Julio Meza, Carla Medina, where's Carla? Raise your hand all the way, there you go. And Eddie Ruiz, who's here working with us for the first time this semester. Current and former students who've had a very important role in this program and upcoming programs. Also students in the Gallery Museum Studies program and members of the KHC Community Committee who are here today generously giving their time to advise us. Can you also just raise your hand? So we have KHC community members on this project too. So it's a really big team. So just to share with you a little bit more about what we're doing here and what this Survivance and Sovereignty project is about, the colloquium addresses cultural survival and resistance of Native American and First Nations people in the face of genocides and mass atrocities on Turtle Island. So what's Turtle Island? Okay, for those who've been here before, actually, can I ask somebody? Can I put somebody in the spot? I'm seeing my students say no. Can somebody, yeah, what, Turtle Island? Turtle Island, absolutely, you're right. Turtle Island is the name given to this continent by the Iroquois, the Anishinaabe, the Lenape, the Native American groups that were the first people, and some who are still first people in this region. It's kind of not unlike Noah's Ark rising from the waters. This indigenous creation story tells us that this continent where we live now came to being with a great turtle raising its back out of the ocean. Native American people and First Nations people are survivors of genocide as defined by the United Nations. And so we lead into thinking about this other word, survivance. What is survivance? It's a kind of a combination of things. It's active survival and resistance in the face of genocide and in opposition to ideas of victimhood. So it's the other side of that. Thinking about that, I also want to begin today's program with a land acknowledgement. So with this in mind, I offer a brief land acknowledgement to the people who are here before us and those who are still here, and we offer respect and recognition. In this way, we open this program and all the programs in this series with a small step towards restorative justice. The land on which we gather to study and to work and to learn tonight is the unceded traditional territory of the Manitok in proximity to the traditional territories of the Lenape and Shinnecock. We recognize that the violence of settler colonialism has forced Native people from this place, but we also recognize the history and continuity of survivance that has made for vibrant communities of Native American First Nations peoples who have remained and who have returned. Now, I promised I'd get to introducing our honored guest tonight. This is Diane Fraher, who will be speaking with. Do you want to come up, Diane? And we have seats here. We're going to be in conversation together. Thank you. Diane Fraher is Osage Cherokee, and she's a filmmaker and a writer and director of a film that you are all going to get to see a little piece of, a film in process called The Heart Stays. She's also, as I mentioned, the founder and director of AMERINDA, American Indian Artists, Inc. It's the oldest community-based multi-arts organizations in the United States. It was founded in the 1980s. And for many years, she has guided and shepherded that organization to do very important work, both in filmmaking, in theater. We'll talk about some of that work, and in visual arts as well. She writes and directs narrative feature films about contemporary Native American people. She is also one of the originators of the New York movement in contemporary Native arts. Her first feature-length film, and we'll get to see the trailer for that. Her first feature-length narrative film, The Reawakening, was also the first feature film directed by a Native woman and wholly produced by Native people. In 2008, the film received the Best Feature from the Native Americans in the Arts and Best Native Picture category at Fargo Film Festival. Diane has a list of other major compliments and grants: an ABC New Talent Development Program Award, Jerome Foundation Awards, National Geographic All Roads Film Project Award, New York State Council on the Arts Program Award, Osage Nation Foundation Award, Paul Robeson Fund for Independent Media, Robert Rauschenberg Foundation, and many other organizations have supported her important work. In 2013, she was a fellow in screenwriting for the New York Foundation for the Arts. She also is a contributor to a number of books that have been and has been published a number of books and edited books through AMERINDA. As the director of AMERINDA, she's produced 6 new plays by Native playwrights, 2 Native interpretations of classical theater, 6 exhibitions, many of contemporary art, 3 nonfiction volumes, and a quarterly on Native arts of a Native arts journal. I also want to share that the last program in the series this year is going to be one that's based on theater, and 2 collaborators that she's worked with a lot from Spider Women Theater, who've been supported and involved with AMERINDA for many, many years. So that is very special that 2 of their original founders will be coming here on April 11th. Okay. So I think we're ready for the lights to go down a little lower. And we're going to start with the brief trailer for The Reawakening. The focus of our conversation, I think, is going to be more on the current film that's in process. But by seeing both of these, you can see a clip and a trailer, and we'll have these 2 pieces of material to talk about, among other things. I have been, just for the background, we have some images from the film in process, some cinematography, and some, and I think this is going to be, this is the poster, the cover, the face of the faces of the film. So we'll talk about this. Do you want to start? Do you want to tell us a little bit more about this particular story, or should we start with your story? Go further back and.
Either way, whatever you're comfortable with.
Will you, one of the first things I was curious about in getting to know you was what is your story like, and how did it lead you to filmmaking? How did you know that you wanted to make films? How did you know you wanted to make art? How did you know you had stories that you wanted to share?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier when we were all visiting together with the fellows, is that I grew up where everyone was telling stories all the time. Native people always tell stories when you ask them a question about something, they tell you this wonderful story, and you learn about what it is that you're asking about, but you learn so much more. And so my grandparents were from the generation, grandfather's born 1888, grandmother 1895. They weren't assimilated. Mm-hmm. And so I was very much influenced by that and that strong storytelling tradition. But that really can be said of pretty much all of our Native families. So.
And what was your thinking of what we saw in the film and the family? What was it like being someone who wanted to tell stories and make films as a young person?
Well, I think when I was thinking about in the story is the struggle to identify with traditional values within the context of modern society, because it's the Native traditional values is what defines somebody as Native. You have to be tell the young people that you have to understand who you are first. You're traditional Osage, or you're traditional Cherokee, or you're whatever nation you're from, and then you're a Native filmmaker, or you're a Native painter, or a Native writer, but you're a Native person first and always. That's this really, and that what really defines that are the traditional values that are passed down. So I was really thinking about that struggle and how important that is, and then how that has really defined the relationship between the Native people and the government pretty much since from the beginning. But I also saw it as a immigrant story because it's also very much about striking out on your own to follow your dream, and how you have to see who you are in the midst of all of that, and the struggle for acceptance and communication and all. So.
And does that story connect to your own story? So I know you came to New York in the 1960s.
No, you're making me even older now.
My parents came in the 60s. I mean, you've been involved in the New York
70s,
movement
70s.
Since the 1970s. So is there something that resonates, or something in this story that connects to your own personal history and a movement from one place to another? And
No, I don't think. I think so. No, it's really is a story of fiction that just came out of my heart. I did come east to go to school because I had a scholarship to go to school, and when I arrived, I saw ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and I believe that Native people could do those things as well. It could be that way for us as well. And I was also from out west, and I knew what the West was like. So if I wanted to be an artist, it was more interesting to me to be in New York than think about going to Los Angeles, because I already knew what the culture of the American West was like. So I thought about that. And also, there were several things. New York didn't just have world-class institutions, it had a community of artists as well. And certainly there was a community of Native artists. And you could also the experience of you could experience performance art, certainly. The immediacy of the experience of when you go to off-Broadway productions, and there was so much creativity in so many different communities. And so that inspired me, my storytelling. So I wanted to stay for that.
So first coming to New York, what other artists were you working with, or were you in conversation with? And are they some of the same people that you collaborate with and who you've worked with AMERINDA over the years?
My grandparents said for me they're the strongest influence on my sisters and I in terms of raising us. That find it where the Indians are, because that's your family. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you're going to do this. Yeah. So I did. I found them pretty quick. Wasn't that hard? And just started. My whole life's work has ended up being in community as an artist, and being with my own people, with Native people. So
I think we're going to share. We'll look through these images as we're talking, but I think with what we're speaking about now, I want to share this image, which just shows a little bit of the visuals related to the work that you've been doing over many years as the director of AMERINDA, that deals with visual arts and publications and performing arts, and recently celebrated a major anniversary too. Mm-hmm. But I think we want to keep, as much as possible, the focus tonight on your filmmaking and what that looks like. And I think we have some students who are in filmmaking classes in the classroom too. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the process of making the heart stays and what challenges or making a film and what that looks like from your perspective.
Well, I think we have to start at the beginning, which is that there are no opportunities for Native people to tell their own stories. In the 100-plus years of filmmaking, American cinema, which is an original American art form, there have only been 5 feature films that were written and directed by Native people. My first feature film, The Reawakening, was the first one with a Native woman, and was also wholly produced by Native people. So there are not opportunities for us, and that's the level to which Native people have been exploited for commercial gain by the non-Native people in America. That's the level to which the rest of America has isolated us and does not know Native people, that we have a living culture. So I saw these things early on, and I felt that, like the other artists of the New York movement in a variety of disciplines, you have to self-empower, okay, because there's not going to be any opportunities otherwise. But I believe so much in our stories, and I believe that we are the best tellers of our own narrative. And I believed in that so much that I feel that I felt that I had to self-empower.
Yeah.
And I say to people that I make, which means not going about it in a conventional manner, that I sort of look to the non-profit side and raise the money to do my films through grants and donations in fellowships to me as an individual artist, and then applied that as the funds to make the film. I say I make community-based films because I go into the Native community and I get the support of the people. It's much better storytelling. It's much richer. The community is really a part of the film, and on many, many layers. Yeah. You'll notice, like in the beginning of the clip of The Heart Stays, there was a house that was out on the prairie, a bungalow-style house in the 1920s. That was an original kit from Sears Roebuck. So when you go into community and you're telling our stories, we don't need to hire a set director to make a facsimile. And the amazing thing about harnessing all of that is that the first idea, the original idea, is always the inspired idea. So going directly into community and galvanizing people and having them, all of us lifted up together, it's much better that way. So that's when I say, I think, also too, I feel that with indigenous people that the land is part of the story. And our relationship to that. The land is not just part of the story, it's a character in the story. So if you're going to make a community-based film, you have to be in community in like a total way. So that, I would say that would be the approach of how I'm trying to do it.
And in the practical sense, how do you decide how do you figure out what that team is that you're going to work with? Find the actors. Are they folks who are in acting programs? Are they folks that from home? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, I've known, as I said, my whole life's work has been in the arts and grounded in community. So the Moccasin Telegraph is very active. And oftentimes something happens, and before you've even left the house, somebody's calling you to ask you about it. It's pretty active. Yeah. So I knew we'd all know one another. Yeah. So again, that's harnessing the power of community and the Native people. Yeah. But you always find. You just find the right people, because it's a more natural form of casting. You're choosing people that really are these characters, and the dialogue is it's how we talk to one another. So it's not so stiff, and the actors can put in a much better performance that way, and look much better for them as well, which you want for them. Yeah, it's not as how do I say it? It's much more, I think when the non-native people work, they always say you have a very relaxed set, and it's kind of because you take all of that, the competition and the exploitation and all of that out of it, and it's kind of nice. They oftentimes don't want to leave and things like that, but it's really much better for the actors and performers too.
Yeah. We've talked before about the challenges related to, I think, taking that way of working and then dealing with places like you shot in Grand Central Station at one point, which you maybe can't slow down, right? What is it like taking the way that you work and the way that you've built this incredible community to work together, and then having it function in different kinds of places, whether it's on land or it's in a metropolis, and probably one of the hardest places to shoot that one can imagine.
That's actually on a different clip, that the scenes in Grand Central harness the power of the people themselves.
Yeah.
Their reaction to us is part of what the story is about. So we go in and set up and start doing things. In terms of Grand Central, Metro North was really wonderful. We reached out to them, and they just bent over backwards to help us. The railroad did so much. The scenes that were on the train and all, they let us. They call it the money train, and no one else was on the train but us, and we were right when we shot, and they just whatever we wanted. They really supported the idea of what we were trying to do. Yeah. So it's harnessing the natural. Again, it goes back to the naturalness of being able to capture the moment in time of where people really are and their reaction to us.
Yeah. How long have you been working on The Heart Stays?
It's as if about 4 years now.
About 4 years.
But the majority of certainly the iconic photography on the nation is done, and beginning some of the work of it in the East. When you're relying on grants and donations and fellowships, it takes a very long time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think we're all going to look forward to seeing the whole film, but do you mind telling us, when it's complete, which it will be, would you mind telling us a little bit more about the scope of that story? Because I think anybody who knows anything about filmmaking, whether it's 1 year or 4 years, you're putting so much into that. So how did you build this story, and how did you decide that this was the film that you wanted to make? And can you tell us a little of the rest of the story? We've seen kind of set it up here.
Well, the story is about two sisters who leave the safety of family and reservation to follow their dreams, and it ends up in the two intersect one another. One wants to be a rock star, and the other one wants to be a writer, and those two things intersect with one another, and one of the sisters ends up on the other one's doorstep at a very inopportune time, and so she's forced to make personal choices, about loyalty to the old ways, traditional ways, and personal achievement. It's obviously a coming-of-age story. It's a Native woman story. It's also the first story with a Native woman in the lead role, and Native American woman, tribally enrolled person in the lead role in a film. And as you can see by the clip, the Native women are very strong. They're the heart of the community. I'm looking at Dave and Steve back there, and they're.
Yeah, it's true.
I always feel like if you lift the women up, you lift the whole community up. So that's sort of the background of the story, is the synopsis of it, so to speak.
Yeah.
What was the second part of what you asked me?
I think we are really welcome questions from the audience too, so I'm sure I'm going to lead the conversation more, but I already see hands. Are you?
I just want to say one more thing, because I think it's important about what we're talking about today. All we're talking about, that there's been 5 films that were written and directed by Native people, and we clearly were the best storytellers of our own narrative. So that means that everything that people see about Native people in the media is false. And Native people are seen as figures of the past. The stories are about identity politics. The Heart Stays is a family story.
Yeah.
It's about how we really are.
Yeah.
And it's not really about identity politics at all. and everyone is alive now. That's another thing people don't realize. We have a living culture. Indians aren't always victims at all.
Yeah.
The places that we live are like, as my husband Steve wrote about in an essay that's in one of the books, that it's also where your parents and your grandparents are buried, and where when you go home, they know you and they're glad to see you. And it's also a place where your people, stretching back forever, they were always there. And they were always on that land, and they know it and understand it. And that's a really nice thing.
Yeah.
So this is a story about things. My work is about things like that. It's not about all these other false images of people.
Yeah.
But think about that. That's all you see. And here we are in the Holocaust Center, and we think about how media was used and has been used in all of these, what happened to the Jewish people and the other people in Europe, and then and all these other subsequent examples. Think about how the images controlled that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So images are pretty important.
Yeah. And I think what the text and the words and what language maybe the words are in that go with those visual images. I'll share with everybody who's here today that I mentioned that Diane is advising us as well on this whole colloquium, but then also on an exhibition that opens next year in the fall here that's called Survivance and Sovereignty on Turtle Island, engaging with contemporary Native American art. So we've been having a lot of conversations about what the images, what the artwork, what the visual things that we want to see are that are made by Native people, and what stories those will tell, and then how the text that we pair that with is going to interpret and tell stories in first-person voices and indigenous people's voices. And then what we add to that is something that not only is not false, but is about uplifting and telling and truth-telling. Was that an impetus for you, wanting to tell a different version to that? Because you could have worked in a lot of different medias. I know we talked a while ago about this and filmmaking specifically and how it reaches people. How do you mentioned how media reaches people, but what about filmmaking as a medium for you feels is what you've dedicated yourself
Well,
to?
I also, when I was much younger, when I was in school, when they studied the Iliad, which is one of my favorite stories. I love many different kind of stories, not just Native stories. I love everybody's stories. But that was really an indigenous tale. Mm-hmm. They didn't write it down for the first 1,000 years.
Yeah.
It was sung as they traveled.
Yeah.
And it was, and if you listen to the way the story's told, it speaks in that voice. And for me, I thought, again, if this is the foundation of what these folks say is their literature.
Yeah.
Well, then they're I think there's a possibility that our stories can be heard. So that was really the beginning for me of thinking about it in that way.
Yeah. And you use language, and I think the speed of speaking, and in a different way than some other films that people may have seen that were about Native people but not by Native people. Can you talk about how you deal with time and language and so forth in your filmmaking?
Well, I like to take, rather than have people speaking in their language and using subtitles, subtext, I like to, if you will, season the language with phrases and words which the story tells you don't have to strain yourself to try to figure out. And so I like to do it in that way too. And again, like I said, the dialogue is more natural. It's how people talk to one another. So people feel, the actors again feel like they can be themselves and give a much richer performances.
Yeah.
So, because Native people do not talk like how they are portrayed in commercial films at all.
Yeah.
So.
My understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's becoming a little more common in Hollywood and in filmmaking to have an advisor, right? Potentially but that up until very recently that didn't exist at all. So the portrayals are that there's no one in the room whatsoever in the production of the film who's speaking who knows how anything should, how it should be portrayed in a truthful manner.
Well, that's true, but let me just say something. What's really important for Native people, and David and Steve and I talk about this a lot, too, in our work with AMERINDA, is Native people do not need to be the advisors about their own narrative. What people need, and all people need, is it's who's in the decision-making role, okay? Who's making the decisions, right? How one way that people are neutralized, okay, is to have them as an advisor, and then you don't have to listen to them, okay? That perpetuates the lack of lack of possibility for Native people to tell their own stories. That hiring them, so that's kind of, and the other thing is that's the main thing.
There's a difference between authoring and advising, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, does anyone want to be the advisor on something about your own life? I mean, you want to tell your story. And that's the way that it keeps Native people from being able to reach their full potential and for them to tell their stories. The interesting thing is that why they're so threatened by that.
Do you have a comment on that, or do you want?
Well, it's many-fold, but I mean,
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah. How is our story maybe of what America is or what Turtle Island is very different if we actually look at it from a indigenous perspective?
The truth, if we tell it from a
Yeah.
truthful perspective.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Let's see. So I've got some more questions, but I know, yes, we already have some in the audience. Joel is going to take this mic, and we're going to pass that around. So whoever has a question, raise your hand, and you'll get the mic, and that way your voice will also be part of the recording. Yes, let's pour something to drink. Barbara. So Barbara Kelly is one of our fellows over this colloquium series and into the exhibition. Do you have a question?
I do. I wondered if in the last years or so, if there was an interest, a bigger interest in Native Americans rather than the way it used to be. If there's more interest.
I think there's a revitalized awareness.
Okay.
But you still have a situation where and this was something I was getting to a while ago, there's so many thoughts in my head, that what still is a real problem, again, for Native people is where non-Native people decide they're going to do something about us or for us without asking us, what would we like? They just decide they're going to do it, and then they go out and do it. Oftentimes, it's very destructive.
Yeah.
It isn't at all what people need or want.
Yeah.
The book about the gentleman wrote the white savior story about the Osage people is the Osage people don't really want that made into a film. That's painful.
Yeah.
That isn't at all. They don't. What Osage people want are like what I want. We want opportunities to tell our own stories, and if that kind of a story is to be told, then it needs to be told. But it's ours to tell, and it's certainly not a white savior story. The story is that the government failed the Indian people, that they broke the trust. It's certainly not a savior story.
Do you mind sharing, because if for folks who don't know about it, a little bit more about what the film you're speaking of, and how the story maybe is obviously very different in that case than
Well, it's a period piece about at a certain time in America about the Osage people and their mineral rights, and how that was taken advantage of, and that the government failed in their trust relationship to protect the Indian people. In fact, created situations that there were, people were killed, and it was really a terrible situation. But it's not. Again, here we are. This was in the early part of the last century, and here we are again, and someone's there trying to exploit that again.
Yeah.
Again, it's so much people making decisions, but it's often for them. It's really secretly about, not secretly, but ironically, paradoxically about them and what they want to do, and they want to do for you, and this is what you need, and this is going to change you. And so often to rescue us from just being ourselves. But so in other words, what is interest, and how does interest translate, and how does that relate to what we call like allyship?
Yeah.
You know, what is a true friend?
Yeah.
When Dr. King, when they were in the civil rights movement, there were non people of color there, to be sure, but they weren't out front leading the march. They were in the march, and they were there to show solidarity. They were people of conscience, and they were definitely players in as were everybody that was in the story, but they weren't leading it.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
I can't answer Barbara's question, but I do think one thing I've seen on this campus is a little bit more knowledge ever since the demonstrations at Standing Rock, which were also about resource extraction, the same way that what your circumstance you're speaking about resource extraction and who's being harmed and will be potentially in the future from the process of resource extraction that happens in land. And we will be having a program as part of this colloquium later in this series that deals with those two things very specifically, resource extraction and questions around allyship. We have a rabbi who kind of heard the call to go to Standing Rock for faith leaders across the United States and further, and went to Standing Rock and was there in solidarity, in allyship. And then also a woman who's a writer, who's indigenous, who's based here in New York, who was at Standing Rock as well. So we'll be talking about environmental issues and issues around resource extraction and questions about like what it is to be an ally. Yeah.
People have to be aware that the America was founded on something which we all know, but I don't think we think enough about what it really means, which is manifest destiny. And that said that people from another part of the world could come here and take what they wanted for theirs, because that some people were only partially human and other people weren't even human. And so that's what happened, and that's what played out. And people don't realize that, they don't think about this, but that doctrine found its way back to Europe, okay? The doctrine of white supremacy, the doctrine that fed all of that, found its way back to Europe and ultimately played out in millions more people being killed so that they could take their possessions, okay? So they could take what they had. That was the same thing. It just went around in a circle. So I think that we have to think about things like that. Like, I think when I walk in this room, somehow I wish that there could be something here that would talk about the historical events about Native people in the Americas, and also about the African slave trade. It's the same thing. It's all connected.
Yeah. That's why we're here for this colloquium, because there was this recognition that there was a missing panel about, there's many genocides that are not represented, but somehow the one that deals with this place that we're in now, that lack seemed so much more of a lack than anything else. And thus this colloquium and this conversation, and then the exhibition that will be here next year. The director previously, who left about a year ago now, Dan Leshem, when I said there seems like there's a missing panel, he said, what about a colloquium? What about an exhibition? And things started to build from there. So hopefully this is the beginning of many more conversations. But I do think maybe the actual panel itself in this room in the future might also be something to think about. Mm-hmm. So because there's a permanence to walking in here as students or as community members and seeing something and it being there, you can go back and read it again and learn something else and see something else.
I feel like that is what it's holding us all back, the lack of truthfulness with one another about the true history of America. Mm-hmm. I think that we could begin to have like a generation of children who actually grew up and became adults, and that, for example, we wouldn't have to keep having all these incidences painful incidents that feel like it's being repeated again, it's happening again, like with things like blackface and things like that, because we would have raised a generation of children who were taught the truth, including the unpleasant part, okay? And so their conscience, they have a new conscience about them, and a consciousness about them that where people don't, that it's not, they're not getting a blank look and saying, well, why are you upset about this? Of course, they know why people would get upset, because they know the true history.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That was a great question that spawned a lot of dialogue. So I know I have some other folks who had questions. Absolutely. Where is our mic? Joel's going to hand you the mic. Great.
Just wanted to thank. Is it on?
Joel, yeah, great.
I wanted to thank you for coming here and bringing some reality to the conversation. My grandfather doesn't have any positive stories, and so this sounds like more of that. And again, thank you.
you're welcome.
I've got a couple other students in the classroom that in the room that I know had some questions, and oh, fantastic, there you go. Or not students, everybody here.
So as a fellow person of color, and as a person whose native peoples were also exploited by, to put it simply, white guys who thought we were subhuman. I just want to say I appreciate, like you said, as the typical American, we don't really see that many representations of native people, and I feel like it is something that we do kind of just push to the side, or maybe not necessarily acknowledge all the time, but Native American culture is a living culture.
Yeah.
We have so many depictions of, like guys, like hunting buffalo on the plains, but it's not like that anymore. But I feel like many Americans, when they think of a Native American, they think of like a chieftain, or like a redskin, and it's just like these offensive portrayals. So I want to say first, I appreciate, as someone who, as like a minority, as a fellow person of color, and even as someone from a like a lower income area, I can see a lot of parallels of our struggles with Native American struggles, and so I just want to put my appreciation first, and secondly, just curiosity, as someone who can barely speak my mother tongue. I would just want to know, as you said, Native American culture, just from what I can see, places a very heavy precedence on oral culture and oral tradition. Mm-hmm. And I was just wondering, because as someone who can barely speak, my mother language, it shows that there's been such a degree of assimilation where I'm probably more of a New Yorker as I am, a Filipino or Hispanic. So I would just like to ask, to what degree of assimilation is there in, like contemporary modern day Native American, like places, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
Well, okay. I'll try to answer that, and also remember, bear in mind that I don't speak for everybody, but I can share with you like what I know. It's like any other group of people. We're in this canoe and we're going up the river of colonialism, and it's like a river of sludge. So there's a lot of things happened along the way, and to a lot of people, and so it's people to varying degrees. I know that in many nations, people are reclaiming their language, and elders are spending a lot of time with young people. I know certainly Osage, not that they ever lost it completely, but people are reclaiming that. They're reclaiming other traditions, right? Because it's comprehensive, like people were not allowed to express their music and dance and things like that as well. Okay, people weren't allowed to express their religious freedom. So what I see is that people are slowly taking that back. They're slowly quietly, calmly, slowly taking that back. And also too, like something, again, my husband wrote about in his piece about sometimes, certainly in the West where we're from, you can begin to see that in some ways, paradoxically, our peoples are are, we have more peace of mind than the mainstream people in the mainstream culture. Because our people fought to hold on to the traditions that we have. And so when we go, it's also like what Steve always says, we know how to deal with this. Because when were we not under siege, first of all? So we have the tools to deal with it. But also, we fought to hold on to those traditions and the language that we could. So that puts us in a position to reclaim more of that, but also gives us the inner strength we need to cope with all the resistance to that. See, so that's something that's a positive part of it that we don't think about.
Yeah. I think in terms of thinking about real history and truth-telling, one of the things that I think many students find shocking when they understand is that we think about our country being founded on freedom of religion, but actually there wasn't religious freedom until 1978, am I correct? Until
Right.
1978, and religious practices were banned. So some of the frustration I think that you see from the father and the need to stay and need to hold is because there's things that you weren't even. Am I wrong? I'm sorry. Is there a connection there? Is there something about the needing to stay in a place and the needing and the want to preserve language or preserve culture or traditions that you fought so hard for?
Well, I mean, if you'd ask him, he'd say he was a realist.
Okay. Yeah.
That his opinions are based on the harsh reality that he's had to face, and he loves his kids, and he's worried about them having to go through similar problems, and that's what parents do, is they worry about their kids going through problems.
Yeah.
So, but he would not say he was a skeptic. He would say he's a realist.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, I know the student who was speaking before, there was a program, if he's interested, or for anybody who didn't see it last semester, all of our programs are going to be on the KHC YouTube, or QCC YouTube. And last semester there was a program on language revitalization talking about Hebrew, and then also talking about Taino, and talking about Tlingit. So not making them the same, but looking at these three different circumstances of language revitalization, and was really interested just to follow those very specific histories, because I think I noticed in the first things that you were saying, you said Osage, not just Native American, but Osage. There's different traditions with different, very specific groups. So, and the questions around assimilation might be different depending on what group or what person you're talking to. Right?
And you have to remember too that assimilation is always, certainly in America, it's been forced.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
it's kind of like things can't change in Hollywood for there to be Native people to have opportunities as long as the fox is in charge of the chicken coop.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because when you have programs, for example, I'm using that because we're here talking about film. When you have training programs there to train, they want young people that they want to train them to act more assimilated. The whole point of finding out who you are in this world is to be who that is, right? And to find the way that you can express it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody doesn't want to be assimilated all the time, so to speak,
Yeah.
or tell those kind of stories.
Yeah. You also, when you say forced assimilation, I don't know if I think some people in the room know about this and some people know a little bit less, but the whole boarding school system, for example, there's one artist who's going to be in the exhibition we're going to have next year called Gina Adams, and on one side she's related to John Adams and John Quincy Adams and Abigail Adams and Samuel Adams, and on the other side she's Anishinaabe, and she had treaty signers on both sides of her family. And on the Anishinaabe side, it's 4 generations of men who were forced to go to schools where they couldn't speak their language and couldn't practice their traditions. But in her time, she's relearning her language. She's part of a language groups, language schools, language groups with elders, and has make it her life's work to address this questions around assimilation and to regain also some of the traditional ceramics practices that would have been passed down to her otherwise. So this is that's just her situation based on the boarding schools that her family had been forced to, the forced assimilation. Yeah.
Well, forced assimilation is a tool, but the reason that it went, people don't realize that America's longest war was the Indian Wars. It went on for about 100 years. The Indian people fought They stood up for themselves. And the government killed leaders, and as many as they could, and they didn't want the Indian people to have leaders. So the boarding school system is also to keep them from having any leadership, because they stand up to them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even now, I mean, it's normal for most tribes to have 2, 3, 4 lawsuits going against the government at any one time. I mean, they fight them in the courts now all the time. But forced assimilation, as I said, is a tool to prevent leadership and people reaching their full human potential, pretty much.
Yeah. Do folks have other folks in the audience have questions? Yes, Joel's got the mic for you.
And a way of communication, the moccasin telegraph. What exactly is that? Is that a local communication?
It's very local. It's all things Indian are extremely local, because everybody. It's a slang expression that I use. I don't know if anybody uses it, but it kind of describes things, because Native people see themselves as related. The Indian people in America see themselves as related to one another, and everything is a familial type of a relationship. If you think about it with your family, your clan, your nation, and in relation to other nations. So, and oftentimes Native people will talk even when they're with other peoples to, they refer to my, relative. We see the other people as our relatives somehow. So it's kind of fundamental that word could travel fast in a situation like that. So that's why I say the moccasin telegraph, that, if you need something, you put it out there, you get a response pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Unless also not so structured. Things are not, the Native people have their own way of communicating and their own. It's not as Native. Everything in the Native community is integrated. It's not compartmentalized. See, religion, politics, sports. It's all connected. It's all integrated. They don't separate it out. When you're out in the mainstream society, things are separated. Like you have a business, can have a business conversation or a personal conversation or all of this. With Native people, it's all same all the time. They're not, and also not politically correct necessarily, but just straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah, and with humor, which was another topic of conversation earlier today.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Other questions from the audience?
Excuse me.
Yeah. I'm going to give you that. If you don't mind taking the mic, I know we can hear you, but this way we have it all on the, all as part of the program for other folks who didn't get to be here today. Thanks. Yeah.
There's this thing about Elizabeth Warren claiming she's an Indian. What's your feelings about that?
Well, that's, I have to say, in the Native community, you hear that a lot, that people say they're part Indian or they have an ancestor that's Indian or something. That's pretty prevalent.
Did she say she was a Cherokee or part of the...
I mean, what I guess I'm addressing is the fact of her saying that that's very common. There's many, many people in America who would say that to you all the time. I think that, I like what the Cherokee Nation said, the man he was on CNN, and I like what the gentleman said to Jake Tapper, which I could see that people, this was great. That was, if you ever get a chance to see that news clip, because it showed how little other Americans know about Indian people. He said that he tried to explain to him it's who her ancestors are would be meaningful to her and her family, of course, but it doesn't make her a citizen of a sovereign Native nation. That the Cherokees decide who their citizens are, and it's based on what family you come from, who you are, okay? And they decide that, and they have to do that, and this is very key. This is really important. This is the real reason, because there's too much at stake, because it's the Native nations who stand up to the government when our rights are at stake. So nations have citizens, and those citizens choose their leaders to do the standing up when that time comes, and that's what's at stake, see? So it's not, no one begrudges anybody that they think that they had someone in that's not a bad thing. I don't even know why it was turned into, because we hear it so much, it was strange to me that it was turned into such a big deal. David and Steve could tell you back there too, in the audience. It's so prevalent.
Is it more interesting to think about the two new Native American women Congress people?
Well, I think I think it's wonderful that they set out to do something and they did it.
Yeah.
I think that's really positive. For me, I just think personally, I think that where the leadership is most needed is at home on the nations. That's the heartbeat of the nation, and I think that's wonderful if they wanted to do that, and I wish them well. But I think at the end of the day, where where people are really needed is at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know how Indians are. They'll get. At some point, because you can't serve two masters, the government will something will be at stake, and they'll have to make a choice.
Yeah.
Because that's life. You can't get around that.
Will you pass that mic right behind you? Thanks.
So when Elizabeth Warren said that, she came back and apologized. She was not really even, she was a small percentage. But it insulted people. Can you explain why is it insulting to a Native American when someone else has Native blood and they don't belong to a tribe? It's matriarchal too, isn't it? Tribes are matriarchal.
Some are, some aren't.
Yeah.
Osages aren't. Osages aren't.
Oh,
But,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it depends. It depends. But yes, some are. That's correct. That some are.
I don't have it. I'm not going to answer that question, but I think I'm going to turn it into a question, which is that, is it who should need to answer that question, right? Who should need to answer the questions about Elizabeth Warren? Is it necessary for all Native people to speak for all other Native people about Elizabeth Warren? Right, and it's not. You don't have to. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say.
Yeah.
I'm kind of was thinking what you're thinking.
Yeah.
There's two aspects to it. That there's the white liberal community, and their protocols, so to speak. Right, the political people and their protocols, and her taking a DNA test and this and that. See, and all that stuff that goes around it. So that's again, but that's not that. Sometimes those ideas, like I said, are things where people deciding for other people how things should be and what's going to be in their best interest, rather than asking the people who are hurt what they need. So, but the other thing is, I think that Native people, that like when you meet people, they want to at home, like the other tribes even, because oftentimes, especially in Oklahoma, is the most populous Native state. But we know a lot of the families in other tribes and all, they want to know what family that you're from, and all people self-declare. But I think that it goes back to that. What I notice is that these folks weren't anywhere to be found in very, very tough times. See, and their people's families shed blood and suffered, so that the Native people now can have the benefits that we have. And especially like with Steve and David and I, we're of the generation that, we knew some of those, that's our grandparents' generation. And we know what they went through and how they were treated and how their parents were treated. So a lot of people suffered. So it in a way, you kind of be liking it to say, well, that maybe one of us saying that, well, one of our relatives may have been in one of the camps or something. It's more serious than that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think let's end with just bringing it back to the film. I haven't showed all of these photographs, but maybe we'll bring it back to the film in process. And if you have anything else that you might want to share with us about the process of making this film, maybe where you are now and what the next step is for this story that we want to be able to see the rest of, and take a bunch of other people we know to go see when it comes out. Do you want to share where you are and where the film is going at this point?
These are some nice shots of Osage Nation, you know, the beauty on the tall grass prairie of Great Plains of North America. They see those clouds are really something. Those huge clouds that roll in over it, and the grass gets really tall, really tall. It's amazing, really beautiful and very peaceful. It's on the prairie. It's so quiet you could hear a pin drop. As I said, all the iconic scenes, the principal photography, all the iconic scenes on the nation. I forgot to mention earlier, like when we go on the road, we always put the crew up, casting crew, we find a local college and put them all up in the dorms. So I took a whole gang of people out there with me to Oklahoma, and then we have a pickup crew there too as well. And then we have the community too, helping to take care of us and all. People feed you and things like that. But that's done, and then we've completed some of the scenes in New York. So, and there are some grant applications that I have out now that I'm hoping that I got a large donation, and it's going to be done. The whole thing's on a SAG, what you call a SAG, ultra low budget. We get a little bit more, we go to modified low budget, but the union will let you produce on a far less money because of the situation that you're providing opportunities to people that aren't ordinarily getting them, and it clearly is. You know, it's far from an exploitative situation. So the hope is that, you know, we'll be able to somehow get those grants and get that money matched so we can go ahead and finish it, because what's left are the scenes in the East. So that's doable. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Diane, for your time, for speaking to us, for sharing this clip that not a lot of people have gotten a chance to see yet. And again, I think we all want to see what's next. And thank you for the wonderful audience, and for Dr. Laura Cohen for being with us here today as the director for First Program. So.
Thank you all.
Please enjoy the refreshments. I think we're all here. We have plenty of time to have conversation and so forth informally. So have drinks, have snacks, chat with each other, and come back for more programming. We have March 1st. We are going to show a film on the Code Talkers, and one of the producers will be here to speak with us as well.